So, what is your favorite book?
My favorite book is a Dutch book, vrouw, dokter.
My favorite book is Little Princess by Conrad Grennan.
The book is about a woman who gets breast cancer, and her husband wants to be there for her, but also can't be there for her.
The storyline is basically a guy that used to work in the United States at a big law firm, or I don't know, at a big firm, don't know if I can say if it was law. But he decides to go and travel the world for a bit, and then he decides to go to Nepal and to work there in some kind of orphanage. And it's basically just for 2 months, 3 months, and then to move on. But after his first 3 months, he leaves and then comes back because the story of the kids were very interesting.
I think I learned family is most important, and you're there for someone who needs you. And sometimes you need your own freedom, but it's okay.
Yeah, I've learned quite a lot about Nepal and the history and the civil war that's was happening over there. And I would say that it learned me the fact that initially a place could be or seem to be beautiful, but that second look you will see that there's a lot more happening than at first sight.
So, would you recommend the book to others?
Yes, I really recommend. Yes.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it. It's quite well written, and yeah, it's not that difficult, but it's a very interesting story, I would say.
My favorite book is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood.
My favorite book is, I think, The Name of the Wind from Patrick Rothfuss.
The storyline is about the handmaid that she's assigned to a certain household, and she's the only important, like her only function, like they tell, is to give birth to a baby for the household because they cannot have babies, and the handmaids exist only for that. And it's really about how different dystopian society and don't give a choice for a woman's, like the woman don't have choice over their own body, which is terrifying.
So it's about the protagonist is Kvothe, and he's a relatively young boy in a fantasy world, also studying at university and developing himself, living in a strange, dark, magical world.
I learned something that I can apply to everyday life. I think it's just important to think about certain things, to have a different viewpoint of the world. And well, this kind of world that she portrayed in her book is terrifying. But I think it's important to just keep in mind of the different view, but also the choice, how important is human choice, right?
Yeah, so the storytelling aspect is something I've really learned from, especially in the context of Dungeons and Dragons, or being a dungeon master or a player, and to create a world in which you can submerge yourself and move about as your fictional character. So, yeah.
So, would you recommend the book to others?
Oh, definitely. It's really nicely written, goes very smoothly, very fast, and the second book also is great.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
One of the best fantasy books I've recently read.
All right. So, what is your favorite book?
Actually, I'm not sure if I have a favorite book, but I'm reading a book so far which is called The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. It's more like a psychology book.
My favorite book is the book Illustrated Songs. It's from Komt.
And I think, to me, it's really interesting because it really looks at people's personalities in terms of how they deal with expectations. And I think I really like it because it's really written in a more like chaotic, funny way. And it's, when you read it, you really have to laugh out loud because you recognize yourself a lot in some of those statements.
It's not necessarily one storyline. It's a book about music in which he emphasizes certain categories, but not necessarily music genres. But for example, he has a genre or like a category called iconic opening lines. So, and then he elaborates on a few songs which has iconic opening lines, and so he has like I think 20 or 30 categories in the book in which he emphasizes 5 songs.
What inspired me about the book is to really learn about myself, how I look at certain situations, but also to understand other people better. So I recognize certain situations, and I think it inspired me also to look a little bit more deeper into that, how people's personalities work. And even though it doesn't really have one storyline, it's really interesting to see how people develop throughout the years and learn through social interactions, pretty much.
not necessarily inspired, but I think I really like to listen to music, and sometimes there's more behind a song than which you think. So sometimes there's a certain story and you thought that the song was about something completely else, but not necessarily inspired, more influenced.
Definitely, I would definitely recommend the book, or even like to dive deeper into the subject in terms of podcasts, talking about people, especially if they, look more at what can I learn, but at the same time also educate myself on.
Oh yeah, definitely, most definitely. If you like to listen to music, then I would definitely recommend it.
I think it would be George Orwell, 1984. It's about a man who works for a government in a dystopian world where surveillance, mass surveillance and oppression is running rampant throughout the world, and he slowly realizes that everything that is happening is impinging on a lot of personal freedom, and he takes a lot of steps, whether knowingly for sure, to resist a lot of the oppression that is happening.
I would say my favorite book is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. The book is about people who live in a parallel universe. They are not really people, they are clones of real people, and they are trying to figure out what makes them human and if they are human. And in that book, they try to explore if creativity is something that makes people human, and that shows them how to express emotions.
Something that I've learned would be really how human psychology can work, and that even when you are like in a system of oppression, there will always be people who will be against it. Even if they're not so loud about it, there will always be people who will question things. That, and then of course the whole human psychology aspect behind like how oppression takes place, what needs to happen in order for that sort of level of oppression to take place, like in a dystopian world. What inspired me, I think, was their story of the small little love story that was kind of in between the main message, that love is found even in those places where you never really would expect to find them.
Maybe not necessarily learned, but it made me think about what distinguishes humans from robots or clones or anything that isn't human. So in that sense, it just made me think about that.
So would you recommend the book to others?
Yes, I definitely would. But a lot of people use the story to kind of warn people in the present day about like Big Brother and like government surveillance, etc. as a warning, like to be careful. But I think it's much more, since it's written so long ago and we're already doing quite a lot of things to make sure that our privacy is actually maintained, at least here in Europe. I think everything should be taken with a grain of salt as usual, but I really recommend it.